Where's the $15,000? Dad's voice cracked the air like a snapped ruler. The question still rings as I trace the choices that led here. My name is Maya Nolan, 24, and I still sleep under the roof where my kindergarten height marks fade on the pantry frame. It isn't because I can't move out. I work full-time as a claims analyst for a regional insurer in Cedar Ridge. Rent wouldn't sink me. It's just that the Nolan house is steady. The back door sticks when it rains. The hall smells faintly of cleaner. It feels like ballast. Lena, 20, a sophomore, in a city an hour down the interstate, treats home like a charging station. She swoops in on holidays, drains the fridge, and leaves with Tupperware she won't return. That isn't entirely her fault. Mom and Dad make her life smooth. Tuition, rent, groceries paid. When I was in school, money was a chalk squeak I couldn't ignore. I shelved textbooks until midnight and poured coffee on weekends. A partial scholarship covered most tuition. The rest was tips and blisters. It made me careful sometimes to a fault. Mom is Ruth, receptionist at Dr. Kaufman's dental clinic. Dad, Eric, coordinates roofing crews. This winter, after an ice storm, he slipped on a gutter and wrenched his back. He took unpaid weeks off while the clinic cut Mom's hours. Bills stacked. They didn't dramatize it, but you could hear money in the house, a longer pause before the grocery total, the soft clicking of Mom's calculator. One Tuesday at first light, I heard them whispering in the kitchen. "We can't float spring tuition," Mom said. Dad rubbed his forehead. "The lake cabin," he murmured. "We're just storing ghosts there." The cabin is really a drafty box on Larkspur Reservoir, inherited from my great-uncle. It holds summers of our lives, a dented canoe, a maple dresser that sticks on humid days, tools Dad replaced but couldn't toss, crates of mason jars, a picnic table sun-bleached to gray. By Saturday, they had a planned clean list sell. For 8 weekends, they became small-time merchants. They hauled the canoe to a neighbor who likes to fish at dawn, $2,600 cash. The maple dresser went to a vintage store for $950 after Dad polished its brass pulls. A yard sale cleared out the snowblower for $700 and the picnic table for $120. The welded tool set brought in $1 and $100 from a contractor friend. Boxes of odds and ends, camp lanterns, fold-up chairs, jelly jars added hundreds more. Piece by piece, the cabin thinned, and our hallway filled with a scrape of empty bins. Cash gathered in an oversized manila envelope, 20s, 50s, and a neat stack of hundreds. They didn't tell Lena. "No sense making noise," Dad said. "We'll hit the bank, then the bursar." The envelope lived in the safe until a morning that felt like trout weather. Dad slid it across the table to me. "Maya, can you deposit this into the family account? I'm slammed with site meetings. Your mom's covering for a hygienist who called out. If we miss lunch hour, we're juggling cashier's checks." I lifted the packet. It was heavier than paper should be. How much total, I asked, though I already knew. 15, he said. Every corner we could sweep. The bank opened 10 minutes after I was due at my desk. My calendar was set with a quarterly audit. My boss had already said non-negotiable. "I can't get there today," I said, "but I'm off tomorrow. I'll be there when they unlock the door." Dad nodded. "Then keep it somewhere not obvious. Not the dresser. Think boring. My room looks like a person who files feelings shelves labeled drawers that hum when they shut." I carried the envelope upstairs and ruled out the places a movie thief would search. The closet was too cliché, the bathroom cabinet too humid. I slid the packet to the very back of my desk's top drawer, under a folder stamped Receipts, 2019 to 2021, then wedged a stack of old tax forms in front of it so the drawer still felt heavy. I locked my door out of reflex, then laughed at myself. We don't lock doors here. Work was a chorus of emails and codes that swarm like gnats. I came home at 6 with screen eyes and a headset groove on my hair. Voices floated from the living room and the glossy chirp of a new phone. Lena had arrived without warning and occupied the couch like a stage. She wore ash-gray boots with mirror-clean heels, a bone-colored sweater that draped like it knew a runway, and a suede tote with a gold emblem I'd only seen in magazines. She turned hair sleek and flashed a phone that seemed to light the whole room. "Ta-da," she said. I upgraded. "Since when are you home?" I asked, dropping my bag by the coat tree. "And since when can you afford that?" "Since I decided not to live like a monk," she said, grinning. "Relax, Aunt Practical. I handled it. There's a tone Lena uses when she thinks you're ridiculous. It's candy-coated but cuts. I tried to ignore it. Did you get a job on campus, I asked, or did Mom and Dad? She waved a hand. Don't make a spreadsheet out of a good day. Shopping bags I hadn't noticed slouched by the sofa, a crisp white one with tissue still breathing. A black one with a rope handle. The room smelled faintly of new leather. My mind unhelpfully pictured blue security threads winking under kitchen light. I told myself to stop. People buy things. It doesn't mean anything. Welcome home, I said, and climbed the stairs to change. In my room, the bedspread still held the morning's crease. The desk waited unremarkable, a little planet of wood grain and coffee rings. I opened the top drawer. Pencils a stapler, the receipts folder exactly where I'd pushed it. I lifted it, sliding my fingers to the back, expecting the smooth, bulky edge of paper that matters. Empty space is a shape. It met my fingertips like cold air after a door slams. I fanned the old tax forms checked again, knelt to see if the packet had skated behind the drawer. Splinters dust 1 escape paperclip. No envelope, no weight, nothing at all. Empty space has a sound if you listen long enough. It's the hush between my racing breaths as I stare into the back of the drawer palm, skimming splinters where the envelope should be. I pull the drawer all the way out and set it on the bed. I check the underside, the rails, the narrow slot where a thing might slide and wait to be found. Dust curls a bent paperclip, nothing else. The envelope isn't mislaid. It's gone. My legs move before my brain does. I'm already halfway down the stairs when I realize I haven't formed a sentence, just a direction. The living room looks like it's hosting a catalog shoot. Shopping bags nest together by the couch. Tissue paper lifts and falls with the air from the vent. Lena half reclines like a model in an ad that wants you to think the couch changed her life. Her new phone, the one bright enough to cast its own weather, grazes her cheek. Where is it? My voice is a stranger in our house. She blinks up at me, amused and a little bored. Hello to you too. The envelope, I say. The cash Dad asked me to deposit. It was in my desk. She cocks her head like I've asked for a missing sock. You keep a lot of envelopes, Maya. Be specific. The one with $15,000, I say. I hear myself say the number and it lands in the room like a slab of something heavy. Her pupils flick just enough to register, then she rolls onto one elbow. You're being dramatic. I take a step closer, because the only way to keep my voice even is to shorten the distance. Did you go into my room? She lifts one shoulder. Your door was unlocked. Did you take the envelope? Maybe you lost it, she says, tone sugar with an aftertaste. You file everything until it suffocates. Maybe your perfect system ate it. I don't answer. I can't. My hands are shaking not from rage yet. Rage needs oxygen, but from the first cold lap of disbelief. Lena studies me the way she used to watch me at the county pool to see if I dive off the high board. She smiles when she thinks I won't. Her phone vibrates in her hand. She swipes and puts it on speaker without looking at me. Hey! Her voice drops into a register she reserves for winning favors she shouldn't have to win. Yeah. It went through. 10. I told you I'd cover it. You can stop freaking out now. The word 10 doesn't belong to anything else in the room. It doesn't belong to the suede tote, or the boots, or the bags that sigh when the heat kicks on. It belongs to the shape that's missing upstairs. I don't plan to reach for her phone, but my hand is already moving. She scrambles to pull it back, and we make a clumsy seesaw of it for 2 seconds before I press the red button and set the phone on the coffee table as if it might burn the rug. You sent $10,000 to someone. My voice is flat so it won't break. It's handled, she says, as if she's speaking to a client I've failed. You don't understand, okay? Who? Why do you care? The laugh she forces out is flimsy. You always want to audit my life. It's exhausting. Who, I repeat. She stands, which puts us face to face. The sweater hangs exactly the way a stylist arranged it to hang. His name is Evan, she says, like it should ring a bell. He had pressure. People were getting ugly. I did what needed doing. The living room tilts just slightly the way it does when you stand too fast. You wired $10,000 to your boyfriend. Fiancé basically, she says, even though no one has used that word before now. And it wasn't all your precious envelope. I bought a few things too. That's not a crime. Taking money from a drawer that doesn't belong to you is, I say. Going into my room is. She flips her hair and gives me a look I know by heart, the "you take everything too seriously" look. "You keep talking like a cop. It's family money. It was in the house. You can't just hoard cash and act like you're a bank." "It was not in the house like loose change," I say. "It was in my desk because Dad asked me to take it to the bank. It wasn't mine to hoard. It wasn't yours to touch. It was sitting there like a dare," she says, as if she's remembering a dare she accepted in middle school. "And anyway, I would have put it back eventually. You're so literal." My mouth opens and closes. Behind her through the window, dusk has gone from soft to bruised. The front door opens. Footsteps. The kitchen light snaps on and Mom's end-of-day sigh carries down the hall. Dad's voice follows mid-conversation, told Pete the estimate was light, and he stops when he sees us, because the temperature of a room can hit a person like a wall. "What's going on?" Dad asks. It's the voice he uses when a crew member is one step from falling through a roof. "Ask Lena," I say. My throat tightens so hard the last two syllables come out grainy. "Ask her where the envelope is." Mom frowns. "What envelope?" "Don't," Lena says quickly. "Do not let her spin this." "The cash," I say. "From the cabin. You asked me to deposit it tomorrow. It's gone." Something like electricity changes Dad's face. He looks at Lena. He looks at the bags by the couch. He looks back at me, not because he doubts me, but because he's asking if there's any way this is a misunderstanding. I shake my head once. He turns slowly toward the bags and reaches into the nearest one, like a diver reaching into a dark crevice. He pulls out a long box with a narrow lid. He opens it. A pair of sunglasses gleams up at him from velvet, a tiny logo printed on a card tucked under the bridge. He sets the box down as if it's heavier than it looks, and reaches into the next bag, producing a sweater wrapped around tissue, a folded receipt, another box. He picks up the receipt without his reading glasses and holds it closer. Numbers ladder down the paper. Lena, Mom says, soft and alarmed. "What is this?" "They're things." "Can we stop pretending like shopping is a felony?" Lena says. Her bravado is too bright. "I'll return some of it." Dad doesn't raise his voice. "That makes it worse." "It took us 8 weekends to scrape that money together." He says each word clean. "It was for your spring tuition because we couldn't make it any other way." Lena blinks. "What are you talking about?" "The envelope you took," I say. "It's not family money. It's tuition the only way it was happening. They sold the canoe, the dresser, everything." I didn't know that Lena says like not knowing changes the math. I thought she cuts herself off. Her throat works. I thought it was Maya's stash. She's always squirreling money away and making a big show of how independent she is. I thought she'd stuffed cash in a drawer like some old lady and wouldn't even notice. "So you admit you took it," I say. The anger finally finds oxygen. "You admit you went into my room, opened my drawer, and helped yourself." "I borrowed it," she snaps. "I was going to fix things." "You heard me on the phone. They were going to hurt him." Dad's eyebrows jump. "People," she says, and it sounds as flimsy as it is. "Friends of friends. It doesn't matter. What matters is I did something, which is more than everyone else was doing." Mom presses a palm to her chest. "Everyone else was selling their memories." She says not sharply, but so quietly the room leans in. "We emptied a life to keep you in school. We were going to tell you when it was in the bank." Dad adds, "We didn't want you worrying over it until it was solid. Now you've put us in a hole I don't see how we climb out of." Lena's face trembles and crumples. "Don't say that," she says. "I'll return the clothes. I'll take back the sunglasses. She glances at the phone on the table, then back at Dad. The 10 is gone, but it fixed something. It kept things from getting ugly. "What 10?" Mom asks, and in the same breath she answers herself. "The phone call. It wasn't a call," Lena says too fast. "It was a message. I was just—" She stops. Her chin lifts. "Fine. I sent 10 to Evan. He owes people. He said they were going to show up at his job if he didn't settle. He said he'd pay me back." When Dad asks, "Soon," she says. "How I ask." "He will," she says, as if the 3 letters can make a bridge over a canyon. "You don't know him." I feel the room tilt back toward the threat I keep trying not to make. My hand finds my phone. I'm aware of every move I'm making, the way a person is aware of a fuse because it leads to an explosion. "We need to file a police report," I say. "We need a record. We can track the purchases. We can give them his name if it comes to that. Lena's hand shoots out toward mine, but stops short, fingers curled like a bird that changed its mind. You wouldn't, she says. Her cheeks go blotchy red that climbs toward the eyes. You do that to me. You did this to all of us, I say. Enough, Dad says, not loud, but final. He faces Lena. Did you take the envelope out of your sister's desk? Lena looks at him and then at the floor. Yes, she whispers. Did you spend part of it and send $10,000 to a boyfriend? Yes, she says. The word is shaped like a fall. Why didn't you ask us for help before you did that? Mom asks, and the question is so unguarded it almost undoes me. Because you always say no to the things I actually need, Lena says, and for a heartbeat she sounds 10, not 20. Because you would have made it a whole big thing. Because I didn't want to give you the chance to talk me out of it. She swallows. Because he said he was scared. Dad exhales through his nose. He sits on the arm of the chair like his knees might give. He looks older than he did this morning, as if a few hours ran over him with a truck. When he speaks again, his voice is too steady for how he looks. We are not calling the police tonight, he says, and I turn to him startled. His gaze finds mine. We'll lock down what we can. We'll make a list of what was bought and what can be returned. We'll call the bank first thing. But here in this room right now, I'm going to make clear what happens next. Lena nods too fast, as if nodding could rewind time. I'll do anything. You're taking a leave from school next semester, he says. You will work. You will pay for the next tuition bill yourself. Your mother and I are not covering $1 of your expenses for classes or rent. Not this spring. Not until you can show a way to do it that doesn't put a blowtorch under this family. She stares at him as if she misheard. What? That's not fair. I can't make that kind of money. You should have thought about that before you opened your sister's drawer, he says, still calm, which makes the words land like iron. This isn't punishment for punishment's sake. It's the only responsible course left that doesn't involve having you put on probation for theft. Don't say theft, she whispers. Call it what it is, I say, and Mom shoots me a look that means let him finish. We're done funding you for now. Dad continues. Tonight, you will gather the receipts and items you purchased. Tomorrow, your mother will take you to return every returnable thing. Anything we can recoup, we will. The rest is gone, and we'll figure out what that means when we get to it. As for Evan, he pauses, and for the first time his voice shakes. If he sets foot on our property, I will personally ask him to leave, and then I will call the police. Lena folds in on herself, arms around her stomach as if she's been struck there. This is insane, she says, but the fight has gone out of the word. It flutters weak. You can't expect me to just... We can, Mom says. We do. She looks at me then, and there's a glare in it. Not the old playful glare that says, I'll rope you into a prank if you don't watch me, but something new, the recognition that I'm not moving. My stance is the same as it was when I was 8, and the neighbor boy threw rocks at Grandma's cat. It's a line I drew in chalk and refused to step over. Dinner happens because our hands know how to make it. Mom warms a casserole. Dad opens and closes cabinets without seeming to look for anything. We eat in a quiet that isn't peace. The clink of forks sounds like a clock. Lena pushes food around her plate and doesn't make eye contact with anyone. When she stands to take her dish to the sink, Dad says leave it. It isn't a kindness, it's a boundary. She sits down again. After the dishes are stacked and the counters are wiped, I take the stairs. On the landing, I pause because there's movement the kind you only catch when you aren't looking for it. In the hallway mirror, I see Lena pulling one of the bags toward her bedroom, holding it to her chest. She stops when she notices me and sets it down like she's been caught taking a second cookie. For a second, we just stand there, both of us, far from the women we pretend to be. I didn't think it would blow up like this, she says. The sentence is small. It was always going to blow up, I say. She wipes at one cheek with her sleeve. You think you're so... She cuts it off. Never mind. In my room, the drawer gapes like an open mouth. I set the drawer back on its rails and close it. It doesn't take. I close it again until the click lands. I sit on the bed and count my breaths until my heart remembers its job is not to sprint, not tonight. An hour slips then too. The house settles. Pipes tap. Dad coughs in his sleep the way he has since the back injury. At some hour that can't decide if it's late or early, there's a knock at my door. Not loud 3 small taps that suggest a person who doesn't want a witness even to the knocking. I know who it is before I answer. Lena stands there in an oversized college sweatshirt, her face scrubbed of the armor she paints on during the day. The hallway light makes a halo of lint around her. She's holding nothing. Her hands are empty. "Can I come in?" she asks. I step aside. She sits on the edge of my desk chair like it might eject her. We don't talk for a stretch that feels like an unpaved road, rough, directionless. When she finally speaks, she doesn't lift her head. "I need help," she says, and the words are not a weapon this time. Not like before. I mean... She stops and starts again. "I can't fix this. I know that. I made it worse. I just..." She breathes, eyes shiny but not spilling. "I don't have $15,000. I don't have anything. You had an envelope, I say, not to be cruel, but because facts are a map, and we keep falling off the road." I know she says, "I'm sorry." I wait. I have learned that if you wait past the first apology, the useful part often comes next. "I thought it was yours," she says, the excuse she tried downstairs, but thinner now, closer to the shape of a hope rather than a claim. "I thought you'd saved it and you'd roll your eyes, but cover me anyway because that's what you do." She breaks off. "I didn't understand what it cost them." "You didn't ask, I say." She nods a tiny wincing motion. I didn't ask. The house hums around us. Somewhere snowmelt drips from the eaves. Somewhere a neighbor's dog answers a train I can't hear. We sit in that humming until she lifts her face and says, "Are you going to hate me forever?" "No," I say, "because you don't need to announce the shape of a thing for it to be true. But I'm not going to lie for you, and I'm not going to pretend this is a misunderstanding." She nods again. "Okay." She stands, then hesitates. And for the first time that day, I see not the costume she put on to broadcast a life she doesn't own, but the girl who used to fall asleep in the back seat on the drive home from the reservoir, sand stuck to her calves. She opens her mouth, shuts it, and leaves before she can say something that unthreads whatever thread we've managed to lay between us. Downstairs, the living room is dim. The bags sit where they sat, quiet as animals after a storm. The couch has a dent where she spent the afternoon, and a second dent where she tried to make herself smaller at dinner. I switch off the lamp and climb back to bed. In the dark, I can see the outline of the desk and the drawer that now holds only paper that does not matter. Morning will put us in motion. Phones, counters, lines, returns. For now, the house breathes. For now, the verdict hangs in the air between walls that have heard our best and worst. For now, we are a family that has said things out loud and can't unsay them. Morning thins the house into shapes, a coffee steam ghost above Mom's mug, Dad's pill bottle, clicking once against the counter, the small scrape of a chair. No one mentions sleep. We move around one another like a crew on a job site where a beam has cracked and everyone knows which wall not to lean on. The returns start before 9. Mom and Lena take the receipts. I volunteer to come because I can read a line item without blinking. At the first boutique, the clerk recognizes the sweater before Lena can unfold it. Within 7 days and tags attached, she says perfectly pleasant. The tag dangles intact. Refund approved. At the accessories counter, sunglasses require a manager. The manager peers at the lenses at us at the receipt and types with a speed that signals the return will land only after she has typed a thesis. Approved, minus a restocking fee. The third store is less friendly. Final sale, the clerk says, tapping a highlighted line at the bottom of the receipt. The boots look unused to me, but the clerk doesn't need to see the heels. Her finger on the neon smear is enough. Lena swallows, nods, folds the box lid as if that's the part you can control. We cross the street to a tech kiosk to ask about the phone. Return window is 14 days, the guy in a logo tee says, barely hiding his glee at being the authority. You're past it. He offers a trade-in price that is an insult wearing a smile. Lena signs anyway and tucks a low-end model into her pocket, the kind that remembers only numbers and names. By noon, we've crumpled through 5 counters and learned the new liturgy, refund, exchange, store credit, final sale. Back at the car, Mom totals the papers on her lap with a pen from the glove box while heat blows at our feet. We recovered a little over 2,000, she says. The number sits there small and brave. At home, Dad is on speaker with the bank. He's put on his reading glasses and a voice he saves for employees who bring ladders to ice. Yes, I understand. No, the wire can't be recalled. he repeats, like someone translating a sentence he hopes will change with repetition. He thanks the bank, hangs up, and looks at the neat stack of refund slips. "We'll take what we can get," he says. "We'll call the card companies to flag charges if any went on plastic." He breathes. "And that's that for today." It is not. The phone begins to ring in intervals as precise as train schedules. Aunt Nora first. She loves Lena with the extravagant faith of an aunt who buys popcorn for breakfast at the fair. She says you kicked her out. Aunt Nora says scandalized. Dad explains steady. Silence, and then the soft thud of a person hearing a different story than the one she rehearsed in the car on the way to call. "I didn't know Aunt Nora says. I'm not wiring her anything." She sighs. "I'll come by this weekend with chili." Uncle Ray calls after lunch. He keeps a ledger in his head for everything. "She's asked me to co-sign a loan," he says blunt. I said no, but I wanted to hear from you before I closed the door. Dad closes it. "Good," Ray says. "I'll still feed her if she shows up." Grandma leaves a message because she never trusts herself not to cry on a live line. "Tell Lena I love her, but my door is not a bank," she says, voice quavering, a hint of steel underneath. "Eric, bring me that list of things still at the cabin. I might know a buyer for the lanterns." And Ruth, stop apologizing for raising a girl with her own mind. By evening, Lena has zipped a suitcase with the self-importance of a traveler and dragged it toward the door. "If I'm not wanted here, I'll go where I am," she announces without looking at anyone. Mom doesn't block her. Dad doesn't beg. I don't suggest a better plan. The door clicks shut. The house exhales. I set a timer on my phone without meaning to. Some internal stopwatch clicks on whenever someone says they're leaving for good. 20 hours later, it rings for no one. Lena texts at 4 p.m. "Can I come back tonight to talk?" Mom replies, "Yes." We're home. We gather at the table with the tiredness only a family can cause. Dad slides a blank notebook into the center like a contract. "If you stay here," he says, "you'll stay under certain terms." Lena nods without sarcasm. The sweatshirt she's wearing could belong to any college freshman in any dorm, gray, shapeless sleeves long enough to tuck hands inside. Her eyes are rimmed red. "Okay," she says. "You will not receive money from us for school or rent right now," Dad says. "You will find work. When you get paid, you will bring the paycheck here. Your mother and I will deposit it into an account that you can't touch for 12 months. You will keep only your tips for daily expenses. The account will be for one use at the end of 12 months your tuition and legitimate living costs. If you choose to give it to anyone else, you may continue to make your own arrangements, but not under our roof." Lena stares at the table grain as if it will give her a new arrangement. "So you're jailers now," she says, the old flare sparking. Mom doesn't flinch. "We're parents." "What about Evan?" The name slips out before she can catch it. Dad's jaw ticks. "He is not to come here. If he does, I will ask him to leave. If he refuses, I will call the police." "You do not give him money that isn't yours to give." Lena's laugh breaks in the middle. "Everything I touch never feels like mine," she says. And for once, there isn't an accusation tucked inside. I expect her to blow up. She doesn't. She nods once. "Okay," she says again, and stands to wash the dishes without being asked. When she turns the faucet, her hand shakes. She steadies it under the water. Work finds her the next day like weather. Ms. Alvarado at the Blue Heron Diner doesn't care about Lena's major or her soft hands. She cares that Lena can carry plates and not vanish in the dead zone between tables and kitchen. 2 weeks training wage, she says, flipping through a calendar. Then bump. Tips are yours. Show up 5 minutes early, and don't bring your voice when customers bring theirs. Lena borrows a pair of black shoes from my closet, the ones I wore when I made cappuccinos in college. The first night, she comes home with a smell that's a little grease and a little syrup hair slipping from a low ponytail, a line of red where a tray pressed against her arm. She places a folded pay stub on the counter like a flag. "This is for the account," she says. She pulls a handful of crumpled bills from her apron and smooths them against the table. "And this is mine." The bills look small and brave the way our refund slips look small and brave. Deposits become their own ritual. Friday evenings after her shift, we drive to the credit union that stays open later than the others. The teller with silver hair recognizes us by the third week. "Savings 12-month hold," she says, smiling at Lena in a way that isn't condescension, but isn't quite neutral either. Lena signs and steps back, palms flat on the counter, like she wants to feel the wood cool her skin. Evan calls on a schedule that doesn't match the bank's. The first time I hear Lena on the porch, voice pitched low. "I can't," she says, and then after a pause that sounds like a hand held out in midair, "I can't." He texts the next morning, "Baby, you know I'm good for it. It was a loan to keep me safe." Then an hour later, "You're cold now. New phone and you forget your man. Then if you loved me, you wouldn't watch me drown." Lena replies once I don't have access to anything. She doesn't reply again. He finds the house phone number and leaves messages that gulp air between sentences. Dad erases them without comment. When the doorbell rings one Thursday and I glimpse a man on the sidewalk with his hands jammed in his pockets, I call Dad before I think. He steps onto the porch and plants himself between the threshold and the steps as if he's checking a beam. "You need to leave," he says. The man smiles in a way that wants to be a sneer and fails. "She owes me." Dad doesn't raise his voice. "She doesn't. You need to leave." When the man tries the smile again, Dad lifts his phone. The man chooses the lower step, then the walkway, then the sidewalk, muttering about how decent people used to be, after Lena sits at the kitchen table with a dish towel twisted in her hands. "He's not always like that," she says, a reflex more than a defense. No one answers. She untwists the towel and folds it neatly like someone trying to make a square from a storm. The job makes her smaller and larger at once. Smaller because by week 3, the tendons at the back of her knees complain about carrying double trays. Larger because she begins to stand in the doorway when she gets home as if the house belongs to her again. She tapes her schedule to the fridge without asking who else might need the space, and the tape sits there patient as a promise. She sets her tips in a jar labeled gas and lunches, and doesn't fish dollars back out of it after midnight. One night, she comes home with an extra $10 bill in her pocket and stares at it like it's a test. Table 11 thought I was funny, she says, not bragging. Just telling the truth that surprised her. No one has thought that in months. She slides the bill into the jar and taps the glass twice with 2 fingers. I pretend I didn't see. A month and Uncle Ray stops by the diner for pie and leaves a 20 under the saucer. Lena tries to run after him to return it. He's already gone. She tells the story at dinner, cheeks pink. He didn't even order coffee. She says mischief, the old kind, running along the edge of her voice. Just pie. He said he had a ledger to balance. She sells the last of the things the boutique wouldn't take back on a neighborhood app, the words polite, lightly worn, wrong size porch pickup. When a buyer doesn't show, she sits on the front steps and watches dusk pull at the streetlights. I can wait, she says, not to anyone in particular. On a Monday in late spring, she meets Evan at the public park because he texts, 5 minutes, please, face to face. She goes because she doesn't want him to invent a version of her that never had the courtesy to look him in the eye at the end. I find out only because she leaves a note on the counter for Mom back by 6, work at 7. She tells me later what he said, not in anger, but with a crispness that feels like she found a way to shelve the day so she can still sleep. He wore the jacket she bought him in December, as if it could act as proof. He started with sweetness. He leaned on history. He said we 15 times in 3 sentences. When she didn't say we back, he shifted to oh. He mentioned a plan, a friend, a sum. He said the bank doesn't have to know if she takes cash from the jar now and replaces it later. He said she is acting brand new. I told him the jar is $10 bills and the bank is numbers. I can't even touch. She says that night, sitting on the floor in my room because my bed has laundry and her room has silence. I told him I work nights and sleep standing up. I told him no. Did he listen, I ask. He listened the way trees listen, she says. He heard wind. How did it end? I handed him the jacket, she says, eyes on her thumbs, which are worrying the seam of her jeans. He said he didn't want it. I said it wasn't mine to keep. She breathes. Then I left. She doesn't cry telling it. She cried earlier, I think, at the park, or in the car at a stoplight, or in the diner restroom 15 minutes into her shift when a coffee maker hissed at her like steam from a bad pipe. At home, she folds the laundry on my bed until the bed looks like a promise someone kept, Sundays settle into their own weather. After church, Grandma comes by with a Tupperware of something that borrows every flavor from the pantry and makes it make sense. She eats one slice of pie and leaves a grocery gift card on the mantel for the house. Mom pretends not to see. Dad sees and pretends he didn't. Lena tucks the card into the drawer next to the batteries where things go that belong to everyone. When the savings account balances cross a round number, the teller shows Lena the slip with a half smile. "Look at that," she says. Lena glances and nods. She doesn't bring it up at dinner. She washes dishes and hums a bit of a song from the radio that cracks at a high note she doesn't reach. One night late, I come down for water and find Lena at the table with a pad of graph paper and a pen. She is not drawing hearts. She is counting something that doesn't look like days. She notices me and turns the paper over, shame and pride colliding on her face. "I like squares," she says, and then laughs at herself for how insufficient that is as a cover. We don't talk about part 2 or part 1. We don't say, "Remember when," in the way that lifts a fight back into the room. We answer the phone when it rings and let it go when it doesn't. We sit outside on warm nights and watch the dark take the yard in slow, even bites. Lena's shoes live by the door. When she puts them on, the rubber squeaks a little from grease and mop water. When she takes them off, she leaves them side by side, their toes touching like they're trying to console each other. On a Wednesday at closing, a customer refuses to pay for a slice of pie he ate to the crust. "It was dry," he says. Lena knows it wasn't, but she knows the rules about the customer as always. She says she can ask the manager to comp it and does. He leaves a quarter on the counter like he's made a point. In the break room, she sits for 30 seconds and stares at her hands, palms up, as if she's reading lines that changed while she wasn't looking. Then she stands, reties her apron, and takes table 8 their check with a smile that isn't plaster. When she gets home, she drops her tips into the jar and doesn't count them until morning. The house is quieter now, not because fewer words live here, but because the kind that rattle have found other rooms. The empty space in my desk drawer became a shape we all can feel even with the drawer closed. It keeps us honest. On Fridays, we pass the bank's glass door and see ourselves reflected 4 figures that don't line up the way you'd plan but line up. On a plain afternoon, the jar lid sticks, and Lena asks me to loosen it. I do, and the parsley on the windowsill releases a small, clean scent when my elbow brushes it. She tips the jar, counts out a handful, and sets it on the table. "Gas," she says. She tucks a single dollar back into the jar, a habit she started without telling anyone. The dollar leans against the glass where the rest can see it. Lena starts leaving singles in the tip jar, the way a person leaves breadcrumbs to prove they can find the path again. By early winter, the jar has a chime when you move it, a small glassy music that announces itself even when no one's listening. Her birthday comes on a Tuesday. We eat at home because restaurants are a language we've all been speaking too much. Mom makes chicken with lemon and capers. Dad buys a cake from a bakery that ices names like it's writing on snow. The 4 of us crowd the table and pretend it isn't strange to sing to a girl who used to collect candles like trophies and now squints as if light could embarrass her. When the plates are cleared, I slide a card across the table. Inside is $500 I've been folding away since September 10s and 20s that make a thick, unassuming stack. For a heartbeat, she looks 13 again, the year she cried when she opened a box and found shoes she'd begged for. Then her face changes. She closes the card and turns to Dad. "Can you put this in the account?" she asks. He looks at her for a long second, as if he's checking a joist, as if he can hear the load it carries, and nods. He tucks the card into his shirt pocket like it's a note he's been asked to deliver without smudging. After the cake, the house thins to clinks and the sound of the fridge cycling and the shush of water in the sink. Mom dries the last plate and stays their dish towel in both hands. "We got some things wrong," she says, not to the room, but to the counter, which has learned to keep a lot of confidences. "We should have told you no more often." Dad leans his hip against the cabinet head, tilting the way it does when he's ready to agree and ready to own his portion. "We tried to make easy where easy didn't belong," he says. He doesn't say more. He doesn't have to. The words sit between them like something set down carefully so it won't crack. Snow melts out of the gutters in a couple of warm spells, and then spring doesn't ask permission. We drive to Larkspur on a day the reservoir flashes like a coin tossed and caught. The cabin stands there emptier than last year, but somehow taller, without all the clutter pinning it down. We've brought a second-hand table strapped to the roof and a box of mismatched chairs that wobble until you learn how to sit in them. Work has a way of making strangers into crews. Mom paints the front room long strokes that quiet the walls. Dad fixes the back step that's been waiting 10 years for a hand that won't wobble. I scrub a window until it stops squinting. Lena unpacks a box of plates and runs her finger along the rim of each one like she's checking for hairline cracks. She stops when she finds a chip and raises it to the light. "This one can be the pie plate," she says. "We won't see the chip under slices." At dusk, we take the chairs to the porch. The boards creak in the places that always creak. A heron moves across the water like the last sentence in a paragraph. The reservoir has the soft shoulder it gets when the wind is thinking about getting up, not sure yet. We sit with our jackets zipped and our hands in our pockets so we won't be tempted to say more than we mean. "I thought money was just numbers," Lena says after a while. She's not talking to any one of us, and she's not performing. She's telling the evening something it can carry for us. Now when I look at a price tag, I see ours. I see Mrs. Chang's ginger snap order, and the coffee that splashed on my shoes, and the table that wanted 8 refills of hot water. No one rushes to nod. No one pats her hand. The screen door clicks once in a breeze. A motor coughs somewhere across the reservoir and then gives up. "I was sure I could skate it forever," she adds, almost a whisper. And then the ice said it was a lake. I think about the drawer in my room and how empty space can become a kind of presence. I don't want to use the word forgiveness because it behaves like a curtain drop and nothing here is theatrical. So I choose the smaller thing that is true. "I'm glad you're here," I say. She turns her face toward mine, profile sharp in the low light, a strand of hair lifting and settling. "Me too," she says. It doesn't land like an apology. It lands like a plank in a bridge someone is building while they stand on it. We eat sandwiches at the new table and laugh when the wobble finds us. Mom wedges a folded postcard under one leg. The table gives in and stops arguing. Later, I walk down to the water with Lena. Stones shift under our shoes. She crouches and skims a flat rock. It hops twice and sinks. She watches the circles fade until they belong to the whole surface again. "I went back and counted," she says. "Everything you sold, the canoe, the dresser, the tools. I added what I've brought to the bank to that list." She doesn't look at me. I'm not saying it adds up. I'm saying I know what I'm adding to. I can feel her wanting me to answer with a balance sheet, with the kind of math that declares an end to a column. Instead, I nod. The water lifts and lays itself down. The light loses its edge and then its color. When we climb back to the porch, Dad is nodding off in his chair, and Mom has tucked her feet up under a blanket, like the girl she was when she first came here. The road home is dark and then familiar and then our street. Inside, Lena puts her shoes together by the door, toes touching. She takes the jar down and sets $1 inside, careful with the way it leans. In my room, I open the desk drawer. The folder sits where I left it. Behind it, the space is still space. I don't reach for it. I close the drawer and let the click stand. The house breathes the way old houses do when they've been told the whole story and have agreed to hold it. In the kitchen, the card from the bank is propped by the fruit bowl, the balance printed in ink that doesn't brag. On the mantel, Grandma's gift card waits for the next grocery list with onions and coffee and dish soap and nothing extravagant. Upstairs, Lena's phone lights once and goes dark. The jar on the counter doesn't chime when the air moves. It keeps its small music for moments when someone lifts it on purpose. We turn off lights. We let the rooms keep watch. The last sound before sleep is the quiet we've earned. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.